ready?
No.
So we're here in our new little podcast studio. If you could see around it, it's like a total disaster mess. Like the bottom tiles below here still aren't done. We're waiting on some artwork and stuff, but you'll be hearing a lot more from us. We created this little studio so that we can pump out some more content for you guys, and today we have some exciting news. So here with me, I have my sweet wife, Carly,
Hi.
and she's super excited to be here, but I was trying to figure out who I could have on here with me that would understand the journey we've been on. We got some pretty big changes coming up, and to some of you it might not be that big, but to us this has been like a roller coaster of a year. So I'm excited to give you guys the rundown of what's going on. So babe, what are we doing?
We're what? We're rebranding.
We
That's
are
how it's felt.
rebranding. Yeah, that is how it's been feeling lately. So we are completely rebranding. We launched Life Elevated about a year ago, and
Not quite a year. It was in January.
Yeah, not quite a year. But it was interesting because right after we launched, we went to dinner with some friends, and it was trippy. So we're at dinner with these friends, and they're telling us of some other friends who they know that just opened a brokerage a few years ago, and their journey. And they told us how they got served a notice of cease and desist because their name was too similar to another competitor's name, and they had to rebrand and change things up. And I think they did it like 2 times. So we were just laughing like, oh, that would suck. And no joke, 2 weeks later, what happened?
We got our own.
We got our own. Yeah, it was wild. Like I get up early, start digging into my email, and I see this email that is titled trademark infringement. And I'm like, shiz.
Just don't open it.
What's this email?
Junk mail.
So I dig into it, and sure enough, there was another real estate brokerage, and our logos were fairly similar, unbeknownst to us. And they accused us of copying them and threatened to get attorneys involved and gave us basically, X amount of days to change up our logo. So I
felt like that just put us in like this tornado of like, well, crap, maybe we should just do everything over.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and the next all day that day and probably the next 2 days, I was on the phone with different trademark attorneys and just digging into this deeper and deeper. And we got multiple opinions. Like some people are like, it's no big deal. Like you could win this easy. Other people are like, yeah, you could win it, but how much money do you want to dump into it? And at the end of the day, after speaking with kind of the biggest takeaway I got was we were young enough and early enough that rebranding wouldn't, it would be okay. And not only that, the more I dug into it and the more I learned about trademarks, this was the biggest deciding factor for me, was I could never fully own Life Elevated because Life Elevated is trademarked left, right, up, down, everywhere. From the state of Utah owns that phrase and that saying, and there's so many companies that spin off of Life Elevated, that motto, here in Utah, and so it didn't really make us that unique. There was one attorney I remember talking to, and he's like, you're just like Life Elevated, it's clever, but you get drowned out in between everybody else's, there's Life Elevated trailers, physical therapy, basically any business you can think in Utah, there's a Life Elevated business. There's even a Life Elevated realty, that I found after we had like set up the brokerage and everything. They're not a brokerage; they just had an LLC, but it was Life Elevated Realty. And so after digging into that more, I'm like, well, if we're trying to build something bigger, and I can't fully own it, like what's going to protect us from like the next guy being like, hey, we don't want you using Life Elevated, or you're in our space. And so I just felt like there was no protection there. So we're rebranding. So after that, we were like just spinning our brains,
So the
trying to
goal was something that no one else had,
right.
something that we were passionate about,
Yep.
and
And that was like our culture, our vibe.
something that we could build into something that we loved.
Yeah. Something that like where we would own the space that we're playing in. So like that's why you see so many of these tech companies here in Utah, like Qualtrics or Divi or there's a bunch of them, but you're just like, that's a weird name. And they did that because like it's a space that they just own, you know. There's no competitors. They can get the domain. So anytime you launch a business, there's like three major things you have to be able to get: the website, the LLC registered with the state, and then the trademarks. And before, I would just look at the website and the LLC. Well, just because you have an LLC doesn't mean you own the rights to that name. So that's what trademarks are. And I knew nothing about trademarks until all this, but I've learned a lot more. So this second time around, we're really like building that foundation right. And so ever since the spring, like right after we launched, we've kind of been like half-heartedly in Life Elevated because it was like a means to an end. But this spring and summer was so busy, like I'm like, I can't change right now. And I ended up going to lunch with those guys that sent us a letter, and they were actually really cool. We even talked about like a potential partnership with them. But at the end of the day, like I just feel like what we're doing is going to be different and like more unique to us. And so here we are. So ever since then, we've just been like, I created an Excel sheet and we're just like jotting down names left and right.
Yeah, if you know anything about Peyton, or if you've ever gone camping with him, or if you're married to him, he has to explore every nook and cranny before he makes a good decision, especially if it's something important.
Yeah, you don't want to miss out on something better. So like even when me and Car were dating, it was like she was ready and I'm like, I think I need a date just a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't like that.
But I made sure I wasn't missing out on anything better. So that's where we've been, and now we're finally getting to a point where we're like it's slowed down and it's time to rebrand. So when was it you went on that trip, that girls' retreat?
Like 2 years ago, year and a half.
What, like, tell us more about that trip, because that's where like a lot of my ideas came from, actually.
Well, you sent me there.
Yeah.
You surprised me, and he sent me to a women's retreat, and their slogan was "Be the Buffalo," and it kind of, I had never heard of this story before, but the story is when there's a storm that's coming over the ridge, there's two things that you can do, and the cow will run away from the storm, which essentially makes it so the cow is in the storm way longer because it just runs with the storm. The buffalo will turn and charge towards the storm. So, yeah, it's hard, and it's hard, like
It's harder for like the
it's
time
harder
being.
for a minute, but the buffalo is in the storm for a way shorter amount of time.
Yeah. So she came back and she showed me all the like swag she got, and I'm like, that, like I had never heard that either.
Which I want some good swag.
Yeah, we'll get some good swag. I'd never heard of that either, like Be the Buffalo. But then I started Googling it and looking into it more, and I'm like, this is a really cool story. And I don't know where it stemmed from or who saw the buffalo charge through the storm, but there's some books written on it, like business books and all that. So like spinning off of that, we're like, that is a cool like purpose, I guess, like the buffalo. So I'm like, I want to incorporate a buffalo into like what we do next. And I remember listening to Gary Vee. He's like, every business needs like some type of mascot or something that like they can run with. And so that stuck with me as well. So I'm like, hey, let's be the buffalo. So pulling off of that, we're like buffalo, 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 and we're like throwing all these names out there with it. And it came down to like we dug more into like, well, I think we started on like be the buff, right?
Yeah.
Be the buff instead of the buffalo. We're like be the buff, short for buffalo, obviously. And then we're like, I feel like buff is too short. We need something on there, and we came up with mountain buff. Like we love the mountains. Anytime I need to like clear my mind or just need to like reground myself, I go to the mountains. And Utah is known for its mountains. Like every year for my birthday, I'm up in the mountains. We moved to a mountain town. Like we love everything about the mountains.
The mountains are our home.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're like mountain buff real estate. And that's where it was born. And we've known that for 3 to 6 months now,
I have,
probably.
yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's probably something different. And like, anyways, I went like all around the world of ideas, chasing down something that could be better. But the more I dug into what it means to be a buff, there's that story that Carr told you, like being the buffalo and what the buffalo stands for, like just even crossing the plains, the pioneers, the Indians. Like if you look into what like the spirit animal the buffalo stands for, it's like steadfastness, abundance, strength, courage, like just all these really cool things that like I love. And then I dug into what it means to be a buff. So there's quite a few definitions actually. One of them is like the first one's a yellowish beige color. So buff is actually like a color in Europe, I think. And then buff to polish or make something smooth. Buff to be in good physical shape with fine muscle tones. In the buff to be naked. I'm fine with all these too, like they're great. And then the last one, a person who is enthusiastically interested in and very knowledgeable about a particular subject. So I'm like, hey, we can be mountain buff, your local real estate buffs or experts or, people that just eat, breathe, and sleep real estate. And the more like we ran along with that tagline, we're like, hey, we could be the buffs, like the real estate buffs. All like the brokerages here are like, oh, you're a real estate agent or you're a fiduciary or you're an advocate or an advisor. But no, like we're going to be the buffs. So I'm like, this is like a whole new territory that I feel like we're going to break into, just that's like unique to our own. And then I'm like, we could launch a podcast called The Real Estate Buffs. I don't know if that's like exactly what it's going to be, but something along those lines. And then YouTube channels and like all like the agents that we have in our office, they can start like denoting themselves as like the real estate buff or like the expert. And we can help them make and produce content here and just educate all of our friends and family and clients on everything there is to know about real estate. And so that is how Mountain Buff was born, and we are so excited to bring this to you guys. In the process, I went to like a ton of people to get their ideas, people that I look up to and respect. And one client in particular, he's a big CEO here in Utah and recently sold part of a business, and he's built some amazing companies. And I was talking with him. I sent over my idea because he's like, hey, when you do your change, let me know. I want to like
give my 2 cents.
Yeah, give my 2 cents. And this is a guy I've helped, I don't know how many properties. I think we've helped him buy 4 now. And like he's well known in areas, like he probably knows, I don't know how many agents, but it's like it means a lot to me to know that he calls me when he's going to make his next real estate move, and not, you know, one of these other guys. And so having a conversation with him, he's like, Peyton, I've used so many agents, and he's like, you're really different in the fact that you're not like pushing me into doing something that maybe I don't want to do, or something that might not be best for me. Like, your strength is you give me all the info and details I need to make a right decision, and then I can use that info to decide like what direction I want to go. He's like, you empower me to like stand on my own 2 feet in the real estate game. And that's what like I've really felt like I've done. Like, I'm never one to be like, hey, like you need to buy this, or I don't know.
I think that's why like real estate sales, like, because you tried sales before and
Right.
you hated it.
Yeah.
But when you're selling homes, you're not selling a specific thing. You're finding something specific for that client, and if they want it, great, and if not, you
Right.
find what they want.
Yeah. I'm really good at finding, like, the house is what sells.
Right.
Obviously, when we're listing something, then yeah, there's some different sales approaches we take and strategies we implement there, but we're never like twisting people's arms, being like, buy this right now. And that's how, like, some people feel like I grew up thinking real estate agents were of the devil. Like, my dad hated real estate agents and never had great experiences with them, and so did like a lot of my friends. And so when I got my license, it was like very like, yeah, I'll just get it. Like, I got it because I'm like, I'll learn more. But then ended up falling in love with like the business and the process and helping people.
Like the challenge of finding what people wanted.
Well, yeah, and
most.
like what real estate brings to people. Like, it's the
Yeah.
American dream, and the life we've been able to build has been all through real estate,
Right.
which has been awesome. So that is what we are doing. We wanted to clue you guys all in on that, and we're super excited to rebrand. It's going to be a process. There's so many things we're going to have to build out and change and do over, and I'm sure we'll make a ton of mistakes moving forward, but we're super excited and like re-energized and just pumped for this new adventure and challenge, and yeah, we're looking forward to it. So, do you have anything you want to say, or?
I mean, you pretty much covered it, but I think I'm just excited to like see what this turns into, like what you've already done with Life Elevated, where we were only in it 100% for 3 months, and now it's something, I feel like Life Elevated was a lot more of a safe choice for
Mhm.
us, whereas now, like Mountain Buff, like it just encompasses like our life and like everything that we love, and like it feels scarier because
Well, it's different.
yeah,
It's like, you're with who? Mountain Buff Real Estate? Like,
yeah, but like Apple phone.
right. Yeah.
So I think the risk is worth it, and
Yep.
I'm excited.
We will be your local real estate buffs, and we're stoked. Moving mountains, one mountain at a time. So, until the next episode, we will see you guys then.